Hi there, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Earth Station One podcast. That's right, folks. We're back, and we are going into the world of noir. That's right, folks. We are going to look at, the dark side of life and, maybe, find some, criminals, maybe find, who done it, and here's looking at you, babe, that type of thing. It's going to be a ton of fun to talk all about. And we got a great crew to talk all about it. Of course, first, Nick Fraser's back with the show. Welcome, sir.
Hello.
And of course, Rob Levy.
Hey, I'm here for a slice of the action.
Oh, yeah, of course he is. And of course, couldn't do this without the main man, the man with the plan, Mr. Mike Gordon.
Howdy.
You ready? Or is it a dark and stormy night where you are at?
It's always dark in Noir Alley, right, guys? No, this is going to be fun. I'm appreciative of Mike for giving us this time because I know noir is not really his thing, but it's we're a couple weeks late because we're not in Noirvember. So I hope you guys had a happy or maybe not so happy, a desperately violent and tragic Noirvember. Is that what we should be going for?
It was a dark and frantic Noirvember.
Never really covered the genre before on Earth Station One, so I thought it would be a great opportunity to do so. And it's something that even though I've been a film fan ever since I can remember, really, film noir wasn't something that I was really interested in and aware of until I'd say maybe about 6-7 years ago. And I do really have to thank, and I think, his name is going to come up a lot here, but Eddie Muller of TCM Turner Classic Movies for sort of helping me wrap my head around the genre, because it's one of those ones that it's one of the reasons why I want to talk to you guys about it and to do a podcast on it, because it's one of those things it's hard to define, and yet I see it used a lot, like by people who just have no idea what it means. Like, for a lot of people, if it's in black and white, it's film noir, or if it's, if it's got any sort of like gunplay in it, it's film noir. If it's a detective story, it's film noir, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's a huge range that is covered under this genre, and there's classic noir, neo noir, et cetera, modern noir. There's all sorts of elements to it. I'm kind of curious as to how you guys first got interested in it or became aware of it. So, Nick, we'll start with you. When do you remember, like, when you started getting involved with film noir as a genre or interested in it? Like, what was the film? Was there a seminal film that like really sparked your interest?
Well, if you're asking for the first one, I know when I was a child, and then later when in junior high school, I saw The Maltese Falcon, which we can go into noir or not on that, but the important part is it's what most people think of with noir. For me, I come round about it from the other way because I am a big fan of Chandler, because as a native Angelino, I'm a sucker for anything that has to do with the history of my hometown, and no one wrote L.A. better, even today, I think, than Raymond Chandler. So that's sort of coming in through the back door with the Chandler things, and then and there's all these other things like Double Indemnity. So much of film noir is set or at least filmed in Los Angeles.
Yes.
And so that's kind of how that comes into, and I had amnesia. I can't tell you really when it all washed, the black tide washed over me. Perhaps a bit longer ago than you, but yeah, I would say certainly the first, the starter drug was Sam Spade.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback on that real quick, just because I think, Maltese Falcon was probably the one that really connected with me more than any of the others. I've heard through certain circles, depending on your definition, et cetera, that a lot of people consider it maybe the first noir, at least in the classic era, which is interesting. Again, we can, there's a lot of discussion. It seems like almost any time a movie's mentioned, there's a debate on whether or not it is noir or not, and some of those debates are going to be ongoing to the end of time. But I do think Maltese Falcon has a lot of the elements of it, and I do like again, to quote Eddie Muller, who, like I said, is really interesting. Like he really shorthandedly defines noir as suffering with style, right? So I think that I think Maltese Falcon definitely covers it, especially the ending of Maltese Falcon, where it's like, it's really just a slap in the face to everybody, including the audience, and I just love it in a beautiful way, I think. So Rob, what about you? Was it that hands-on for you?
Well, it's interesting because the Maltese Falcon we love is, I think, the second version of it made.
It is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we'll get back to that. Yeah, I knew it was in there. So my way's kind of roundabout. I decided one day when I was watching TV, because I'm a nerd, TCM was having TCM back in the day, like up to maybe 7 to 10 years ago, was doing classes, and they had an online class on film noir, right? So I said, "Oh, I'm going to take this because I've always wanted to learn more." And I realized that a lot of these movies I had already seen, but I just didn't know they were film noir.
Yeah.
But I really dove into it through the TCM class, and they had like 2 months of movies. And then just, when I'm in Chicago or New York or, here in St. Louis, if they have classic screenings, a lot of the times your local retro theater will show a lot of noir films because they're still very popular. So I kind of came at it that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Excellent. And yeah, I think you're right. I mean, yes, we all have TCM to thank and still thank. Eddie is still, out there almost every Saturday night, showing in Noir Alley, showing a different movie. It's amazing to me that classic noir is usually defined as like starting in the early 40s to probably, I'd say, the mid 50s, right? I mean, it's kind of like, depending on who you talk to, what the last classic film noir movie was, but it's usually in there. And, but it's amazing, like how many movies, like we're talking like 300-400 movies can be sort of put under that umbrella in some ways, which in and of itself is humongous. And then, then the influence that those movies will have on other movies going into the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, even through today. And so there's elements of noir, I think, still today in movies that are released. So it's really interesting to track that, I think. But I've always been attracted to detective stories. I've always been attracted to, from very, very early on, I was attracted to Hitchcock. And as much as I love Alfred Hitchcock movies, I've always had a difficult time categorizing any of those as noir. And I still do, even though I think the definition does cover a lot of his movies set in the late 40s and into the 50s in some cases, which is kind of interesting to me because I see them in Hitchcock first and not as noir. But there are some movies that come up, as well as underground movies, movies that are made from very, very low budgets. So if you're a noir fan and you want to run the gambit, there's a lot of stuff to go through, and some of it's not that great.
Like anything else, though, like any other genre.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Some of it for production reasons was made on the cheap.
Oh, absolutely. Poverty Row Studios, right? We love Poverty Row Studios, especially little studios like, and the sort of B teams, C teams of RKO, MGM, are cranking these things out, and some of them are real gems. And it's thanks to TCM and developing my interest in film noir that have made me aware of movies that I don't know if I would have connected with any other way. So let's get into it. Some of our favorites over the years. Nick, we'll go back to you. Do you have a particular, if someone said to you, I want to know, I want to know about film noir. I'm not really sure is there one movie that you consider a favorite that you would be you can hand it to them and say, this is my definition of film noir.
I am famous for never having a favorite, and normally I would say, well, Hard Boiled Detectives. But in this one instance, I do have a favorite. And that film is Out of the Past.
Oh, nice.
With Mitchum. It is the platonic perfect of the film noir, as far as I'm concerned. It's got all the things, almost all the things the only thing it could do more is would had more Los Angeles in it for me. But it's got the dark visuals. It's got the hammer it into your head, the countryside is better type thing. It's got the gangster. It's got the private detective. It's got the fractured narrative with the wonderful ironic voiceover narrative. It's got the femme fatale. It's got betrayal. It's got everything you need for a film noir.
Yeah, it's a great choice. It's a great choice, and it's a great option. Mitchum is one of the huge, like one of the big faces of noir. Like 9 times out of 10, if you pick a Mitchum film from this period, in this time period, classic noir, like it's just oozing with something. Like he's got something about, almost more so than I'd say even Bogart, who usually is the face of noir in a lot of like pop culture ways. But Mitchum is just. And that movie is great too. The woman in that is a really great femme fatale.
Jane Greer.
Jane Greer, right?
And Jane Greer, and a tiny little role for Rhonda Fleming.
Oh yes,
as the secondary femme fatale.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great pick. Yeah, Rob.
All right, so I've got to choose between 3, so I won't name all of them.
We might get another round here,
but
I've got backups, so yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah. So I'm going to jump in with just The Third Man, just because it's got all the sort of Cold War, beginning of the Cold War angst. It's amazingly shot in shadows and dark and stuff. And Joseph Cotten, the other guy who's in every film noir movie, is fantastic in it. Wells is great, but it's an example of. Noir is very much a style, and if you watch The Third Man, it's very much a style in terms of the shadow and the lighting of it, and also sort of the dialogue too as well. And yeah, so I'll go with that one.
It does have the cinema's greatest mutant, Orson Welles, in there too. So
yes. And it's yeah, I mean that one is oozing with style as well. Black and white. Carol Reed is just phenomenal.
Yes.
Another one of his that I really was introduced to just recently actually was Odd Man Out.
Yes.
With James Mason, and both of those combined, I'm like, I don't know if there's a category for sort of quote unquote English noir, but
yes, oh yes, there is.
There very much, there very definitely is.
Yeah,
yes.
because yeah, they're definitely, these are those A pictures for sure. And one thing is also about I think The Third Man too is it's sort of like. It seems to be more about more than just about a guy who's caught up in something. It's almost like just this post-war Europe is caught up in something. I mean, post-war Europe becomes this whole like dark city, this whole like dark alley, dangerous place, full of unsavory characters.
And I like to see sort of the gang underworld. Leave New York or LA or San Francisco and go into some place that you don't expect it necessarily, which is Vienna, right? And they do this thing where when you think of Vienna, you're like, oh, it's like Paris. It's the city that you think of just all this stuff, but it's literally in rubbles. And they filmed it in Vienna 75 years ago. Now they were filming this movie in Vienna, and it's falling apart and it's crumbling. And I believe Wells used actual citizens for extras as well.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me.
Well, Wells didn't direct this movie.
Right.
No.
So,
but he had a very good hand in how it looked.
Sure.
And he
kind of was a control guy.
Yes. Yeah. I'm sure he offered his opinion whether it was asked for or not.
It's absolutely. Very good choices. My favorite noir movie that I would give to anybody and say this is my definition of noir is a movie I've rewatched so many times. Is Night in the City. Night in the City stars another big face of noir, Richard Widmark, who I love because on the one hand he can play these evil assassins, demonic agents of violence. I mean, I think if they were going to make a Batman movie in the 40s, that Richard Widmark would have been the Joker, if not like you look at what he is as what is it, Panic in the City? Is that he's in that one?
Panic
right?
No, he's Panic in the Streets. He's the good
Panic
guy.
in the Streets, right?
I think he's the uniformed health agent in Panic in the Streets. Perhaps you're thinking of Kiss of Death.
I am thinking of Kiss of Death. Kiss of Death is the one where he famously throws Grandma down the stairs, down the stairway,
laughing hysterically.
And he's so good at playing bad. But what I really like about Night in the City is that he's this guy who's just trying to scrape two pennies together. He's thinking big. He's dreaming big. Also takes place in England, because you couldn't film this ending. This movie in Hollywood. I think another thing I like about this movie is that it's done by some guys who were blacklisted, so they couldn't work in Hollywood. So they had sort of that shadow over them. But Richard Widmark plays a guy who's a dreamer. He wants so desperately to be the guy, the man, and he has an opportunity to control an aspect, to get involved with professional wrestling in London. And I'm a big pro wrestling guy, so that fits right there too with me. I'm a big, as you know, Rob, I'm a big Anglophile, so I love things set, and this feels like London Underground. This is not your city where this is not London where the royals are there, or your Buckingham Palace and all that kind of stuff. No, this is seedy underground where you've got all these kinds of characters, and you've got a mob, and the thing I also like about noir is that, at least I think, one of the elements that appeals to me is that you've got main characters that have to struggle with doing the right thing or doing something bad because it's easier, because it's lucrative, because it's their way out of their present situation. And the choices that they make have ramifications and consequences, at least until the code usually comes in at the end, the Hollywood code, and makes things all right again. And a lot of times that kind of ruins a lot of good noir stories that were done in Hollywood. But in this case, he knows what he's doing is wrong, but he can't help it, and he needs to get that extra like edge in life, and he just just one thing goes wrong, just one little thing, and it just falls like a house of cards. And it's so beautifully done that I just enjoy watching it over and over again.
3 little points in my mind spark off what you said. One, the importance of the blacklist in the shaping of film noir cannot be underestimated.
Right.
2, a common joke among noiristas is the co-star is always fate. It just never gets a screen credit.
Yes, very good.
And third, as a pro wrestling guy, of course, Mike Mazurki.
Yep.
One of the great rogues gallery character faces you get in noir. He shows up again and again and again. He shows up in one of the best Marlowe adaptations, Murder My Sweet, which of course comes from Farewell My Lovely, where he's Moose Malone. There's all sorts of great reoccurring faces and character actors that paid the rent because of film noir.
Absolutely. I mean, because a lot of these are done, like I said, under the sort of the B team or the C team with studios. These people are under contract. They're contract players, so they're character actors. And sometimes these smaller movies allow character actors to become leads and so you get some real interesting movies that are done with people that you wouldn't normally see in lead roles.
And the studio may not be paying quite as much attention to these things as they were for the A pictures. So
Yes,
that allowed
absolutely.
a little bit of more freedom.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Not to say that there are not A noirs, because there certainly are.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, we haven't mentioned anything that Billy Wilder did, but of course, he's responsible for two of the big. We've already mentioned well, we haven't mentioned Sunset Boulevard yet, but that's one of them, right? And then, of course, Double Indemnity, which I think, Rob, you mentioned. I mean, that's those are two usually go-tos when people are looking at noir movies as well, right?
Yeah, I was going to jump in on Double Indemnity because it's such a fantastic movie, right? It's what I love about it is it's kind of this weird thing that you get in some noir. You don't get this in every noir film, right? But you've got Edward G. Robinson later in his career, right? Sort of playing against type. He's not a gangster or whatever, but he's really great in it, right? Then you've got Barbara Stanwyck, who just eats up the camera, right? And is
queen of noirs. She's my queen.
Pretty much the prototypical femme fatale, right? And then you've got, and what's weird about these things too is that there's so many actors that would show up in 50s television later in film noirs, like Hugh Beaumont's in some of these, right?
Yep.
Eddie Albert's in a couple, right? Or Eddie Arnold, sorry. But then this one has Fred McMurray. Fred McMurray's work outside of television is fantastic, right?
Oh yeah.
But Double Indemnity, he's just terrific, and it's seamless. It's also, I think, Double Indemnity more so than Maltese Falcon, because Falcon's got a lot of stuff going on that people are like, what, huh? Double Indemnity is just something that anybody who wants to see an old movie can pick up and run with, which is why I think it remains so popular.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. Good point. Yeah,
and
Fred McMurray, who Billy Wilder makes him does Fred McMurray dirty a little bit too in The Apartment, which is not really noir, but it's still like one of those Billy. People who are so used to him on My Three Sons or whatever look at those movies and like, what is like it's just like he is so awful.
That's the thing for people of our generation or younger. There are so many avuncular, safe people we think of who are just awful shits in film noir. Lloyd Bridges, Mr. Sequest. Oh my God, he's horrible. Especially in Try and Catch Me, where he's like a trapped rat in a jail cell. Harry Morgan, Colonel Potter. He's a trained, hardened killer in The Big Clock. He's usually got some sort of developmental disability, but for the one tiny scene in Somewhere in the Night, he is a mean, angry little man. Yeah. And Richard Basehart, no, he's not the Admiral. No, in Somewhere He Walked by Night, he's terrible. In Crossfire, I swear to God, William Conrad is cosplaying Harvey Bullock. He comes out with the big belly and the big hat, and he guns the guy down.
I think he's better in The Killers, which is the first thing he did.
That's the other one I was going to mention.
When William Conrad is just fantastic in The Killers, right?
Yes,
which is also on my list. But not the Angie Dickinson one.
No.
I understand. Burt Lancaster at the bottom of the barrel of horrible people is none other than Ironsides and Perry Mason himself. Raymond Burr is always the villain when he shows up in film noir.
Yeah. He's always the quote unquote heavy.
Yeah, he's the heavy.
Sometimes I think they coined the term heavy because of Raymond Burr in noir.
He's a terrible person whenever he shows up.
Yeah. The one that because a lot of people think of Perry Mason, or later on when he's Ironside, right? He's always like on the side of good. But man, back then he was always bad news. Whenever you saw Raymond Burr, I can't think of offhand of a film noir performance where he's like a good guy.
The only thing he is a good guy in this era is Godzilla.
That's true.
And that's not a noir. That's not a noir.
No. That's a whole different discussion. But yeah, oh man, and there's one that actually should make my list too of one of my favorites. It's the one where oh man, Elizabeth Scott and Raymond Burr, and who's the lead in it? And he plays an insurance guy, kind of like a play on Double Indemnity, where he's an insurance guy and he gets
this.
yeah, he gets seduced by Elizabeth Scott.
Pitfall.
I don't think it's Pitfall. That sounds I don't know. I'll have to look it up. But anyway,
that's the other problem with noirs. They have they went for lurid titles.
Yes.
So there are so many By Night or So yeah.
Since we mentioned a few of them, I mean, I think I don't want to spend like way too much time on it too, but because it's not something you see much anymore. But I think out of this era comes the femme fatale, right? The queen. You know, I think Barbara Stanwyck is perfect at this, especially in Double Indemnity, but also in other movies as well. And to me, she runs the gambit. I mean, I think she did like 10 or 12 noirs total. And she, you know, I think I just watched Gambling Lady, which she's great in. And a lot of times it's amazing to me because she'll take the role that I think in some ways is maybe was written for the man, you know, and then and she has like actors play off of her rather than, you know, the other way around, which I think is interesting. But yeah, there's so many sort of other Lauren Bacall, of course. Yeah. And yeah, go ahead. Mention some other queens of noir.
Ida Lupino is one of my favorites, along with Anne Sheridan.
Yeah, Elizabeth Scott, as we said. Yvonne DiCarlo's great in a couple of these. Mm-hmm. Man, there's a ton.
Joan Crawford made a lot of these.
She did.
Yeah. Rita Hayworth is fantastic in Gilda.
Oh, yes.
And Lady from Shanghai.
And also Lady from Shanghai. And then isn't she also in Touch of Evil?
No.
Someone's a Touch of Evil.
No, Touch of Evil is Marlene Dietrich.
Yeah, she's great in that too.
Yes. Janet Leigh's in that too.
Janet Leigh is the female lead in Touch of Evil. I'm glad, by the way, Mike, that you mentioned Sunset Boulevard. Sunset Boulevard is one of two films in the noir canon that I think is so good that it transcends mere noir. If one can say mere noir, Sunset Boulevard is one, but you have to really understand Hollywood to get a lot of the jokes. And it is, in fact, a very dark comedy, or at least has a lot of laughs. And the other one, with Robert Mitchum himself, as far as I'm concerned, is Night of the Hunter.
Yes.
Which I love the idea that it's a noir fairy tale.
I every time I watch Night of the Hunter, I'm marveled at because it's not looking Charles Lawton, who directed it and is not in it, but he directed it so beautifully. First of all, I can't imagine that he never directed another movie, because I'm just like, he's so good. Like, this is so good. I want more of this. And he's not going for realism here. It has a storybook quality to it, but it's so creepy. It's so good. And of course, you know, again, Mitchum, you know, plays a role similar. You know, he does these kind of like psychotic roles like this and in Cape Fear, but he can also play like just this guy caught up in stuff that, you know, he has no business being in.
Sadly, Night of the Hunter did the one thing Hollywood can't stand, which is didn't make a lot of money.
So that probably,
but it's considered a great classic to this day, deservedly so, I feel.
Well, a lot of these movies too weren't really gangbusters right away,
right?
But they did fantastic later.
And enough of them did well enough. Because, like I said, they were done on the cheap, Poverty Row Studios. They were done by the B team, so they're on, you know, they're part of double features. But the crowds like them. They do what they're supposed to. They get the people in there. They get the people talking, and they keep making more. So they keep churning them out because they are popular.
And they did really well, you know, when we got to the 50s and people needed stuff to show late at night, and we had sort of the idea of the late night movie or the drive-ins.
Yes.
A lot of these movies sort of got a second shelf life, right?
So in an ironic way, television both killed and saved film noir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it did.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, you could say that about classic horror too. It's a lot of stuff that happened there. But it also, as we mentioned too, gave a lot of work to a lot of these actors that we see in these. Any other shout outs you want to give real quick to anything else? I mean, I know, like I said, there's so many, but just any of your favorites from Hollywood now. We're gonna go outside of Hollywood in a second.
I love the gimmicky stuff. I got to admit,
Okay.
DOA, one of my favorites, one of the craziest plots ever, and then Kansas City Confidential,
Yes.
which of course Tarantino loved. But DOA is a man stumbles into a police station and says, "I want to report a murder, me," and then has to tell this crazy story as to how he got there, and then him running wild in the streets in San Francisco. No, that's
Ed O'Brien, right? Edmund O'Brien is one of
Edmund
the
O'Brien.
faces of noir for sure.
Another famous noir face.
And he can flip. Like he can play the bad, he can play the good. Robert Ryan's another one. He can play the bad, he can play the good. There's so many great examples with him in it too. But
in some movies he's both.
That's true. What Edmund O'Brien, I just saw DOA and I love that. I loved rewatching it again. I just think it is crazy, like, to follow the plot. I mean, it's just Edmund O'Brien just running around sweating for an hour and a half. Like, it's just,
and of course that's so one of the criticisms. That's one of the criticisms people sometimes have of noir, is that the plot is so hard to follow. But you know, you don't. That's not necessarily the reason you should come to noir, and frankly, you should challenge yourself. And I polled some friends of mine about what do you like about noir, and one of them says, "You know, I kind of like the crazy plots. Besides, sometimes you end up with a lead doorstop instead of a jeweled bird."
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think also, no matter how crazy sometimes the plots get, like if you look at, if you look at Big Sleep, nobody can make sense of that plot. Even the
Famously.
original writer can't make sense of that plot. But I think that it's just a matter of, if you've got the right actors and you've got the right central character who's running around and who's, responding to all of this. I mean, how many of us, we can all relate to things being so crazy we cannot grasp what's going on.
Yeah.
And we're caught like flies in a web. We just can't get out. That's struggle.
That's really the main thing of noir.
I think
talk about a movie where one thing goes wrong. Another one, Eddie Miller refers to it as Andy Hardy Goes to Hell. It's called Quicksand, where Mickey Rooney embezzles $20, and I don't think it's quicksand. It just snowballs. Everything just gets worse and worse and worse from that one little action. And I think it's a case of, the main mood of noir is, oh my God, the universe is out to get me, and I don't. So,
but they also use flashbacks very well too. A lot of the really good ones too.
Yeah,
that's kind of another trademark of it. I know you were talking about movies that sort of are off the radar. For me, I found this through Eddie Muller, and it's fantastic. It's called Gun Crazy. It's from 1950.
Yes.
It's a B studio film. It's bonkers. It holds up well. It's kind of frightening in today's contemporary world.
King Brothers, great work.
And then two George Raft movies. George Raft's kind of the great tragic figure of film noir, because he basically was actually pretty much a gangster in every way, shape, and form. But he literally turned down every great movie ever made because he didn't want to do it. But he did two of these that are really great: Johnny Angel and Intrigue. They're both, I think Intrigue is 47 and the other one's 46. But he always sort of just played this immoral character that had a soft spot for the girls. And your prototypical, think of a film noir stereotype, it's always George Raft, because George Raft is like, you read the script and you do it. And he talks like, he's got the whole Dragnet voice thing down before Dragnet, right? And but he's great in all the B movies he did. But I would seek out Gun Crazy if you've never seen a film noir.
Gun Crazy is excellent. Gun Crazy is just as
I would too.
It's as good a place to start as any.
Yeah.
It's
like Roger Corman made Bonnie and Clyde. I mean, it's just like it's crazy. The
only difference was Roger Corman never paid any attention to the production code.
Well, true.
Yeah.
True that. All right. So let's get out of Hollywood for a bit, because I know and we're time's going by so fast. But so let's talk about sort of maybe international or more neo-noir, elements that we like. Because I know some people are purists, they look at the stuff if it's in color, it's not noir. If it's not set in America, it's not noir. It's like there's all these everybody's got their boxes that they check, and one thing I love about Eddie is that he's not interested in like excluding, like he's not interested in gatekeeping. He lets if it's got a single element of that's noirish, he loves exploring it, and I love that element of his show, and it's made me sort of welcome. I really love, to be honest with you, I really love sort of Japanese noir. It's sort of done sort of after, World War II into the 50s, maybe even in the 60s, but you've got all these sort of figures that are trapped in these situations, or these youths that don't know any better and then get caught up with the Yakuza or the gang or, I eat that stuff up.
I love Tokyo Drifter, and I love Cruel. It was a Cruel Gun Story, which I think is 64. I love that one, and then Fugitive from the Past, which is very influential, as well. So there's a bunch. I mean, there's just
Drunken Angel.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch, and when you start getting around to John Woo and some of these other Hong Kong films later, there are a little bit of the marks of noir in that too.
Sure.
There's a
lot
of
of Kurosawa's early work.
Yeah.
I think goes into that as well. There's a High and Low, which I love a lot too. From
a great pulp novelist, Ed McBain.
Yes, absolutely. It's so crazy. But Rob, I know that you have an affinity for the French as well.
Well, I love it all, but there's a couple French films that are important. Rafifi is amazing. Which is 1955. If you've never seen that, that's fantastic. There is the Red Circle or
Le Cercle Rouge by Jean-Pierre Melville. I love that film.
Which is from 1970, so it's a little later, but it's great. But Elevator to the Gallows.
I was going to say Elevator to the Gallows. I think it's my favorite.
And Pepe Le Moko is great. Now Pepe Le Moko and Panique are from 37 and 46. So they kind of predate a lot of the American noir. The French were kind of just starting to look at some of this stuff. Like you look at M and some of these other films, they're starting to really develop some of this stuff, right? I mean, you look at M's not really French, but
it's not at all French. It's so the French is one element that goes in more, and the other one is German expressionism.
So that's kind of what I was getting to.
I'm going to let you go on French because
I was kind of starting to segue into that, but the French took it, kind of started it, then it spread into sort of post-Weimar Germany really well, and then World War II just kind of stunted that in Europe, but in America it was still going. And that is, and we sort of perfected it. We took a lot of the tropes and stuff they did in Panique and Pepe Le Moko and changed around. But you could argue too that we had gangster films in the 30s that were the precursors of noir. So it's kind of like the French took the gangster films of the 30s, right? Like the Roaring Twenties and stuff, and they just kind of put their own spin on it. And that's one of the origins of noir.
I think
that's definitely one of the things that evolved into noir.
Definitely. I thought they were doing some really interesting things, and then they sort of got caught in new wave and then sort of took it to other places, which, to be honest with you, I'm not a big new wave fan. So French new wave guy. So people can have their Godards and their Truffauts and their, whatever, but there's the roots of what they were inspired by you can see even in like something like Breathless.
Well, the way I look at this evolution is that some of this started in France with poetic realism. A lot of it started with German expressionism. Yeah. But most of the people, especially like Fritz Lang and Siodmak and Dmytryk, they had to leave because, Nazis.
Yeah.
And they came to America and they fed themselves making these things that also came through the another flow was the hard-boiled school literature, the pulps. And so they made good, hard-working, gritty films like that. And then these all got piled up in a one big package that went to France after, because they hadn't been to see them because, Nazis. And then they came up with this term, film noir, because of course no one in Hollywood was making film noir. That touches on something that no style of film creates more ridiculous arguments about what is and what isn't than film noir.
Yeah.
And at the time, they were making either crime thrillers or murder dramas. And the word melodrama got thrown around a lot because melodrama didn't mean the same thing then that it quite means today.
And they didn't really think of it as film noir then either.
No,
they
didn't
not
at all.
No, I'm making a film noir. It was like I'm making a gangster film, or
this a crime film, crime thriller. This was something that a bunch of French theorists who later became directors came up with, and we didn't really hear about it in this country in an usual parlance until about 1972, when other smarty pants film people wrote about it in English.
Yeah, and I don't even think it became like I think it took like someone like Eddie Muller and his book Dark City to really flesh out like, hey, a lot of this stuff that was done then has these elements in common. Take a look at it, because I think it, like, from an academic's point of view and from just a film cinema point of view, take a look at these things and what was going on. It's really interesting. And so we're getting close to having to wrap up, but I am kind of curious because, as I pointed out, a lot of this stuff I think is still influential today. I still see elements of today. So I'm gonna jump way ahead here, and I'm kind of curious as to what your most recent experience, like a most recent movie experience, was seeing something and you said, oh, that's noir. I think I like that. I mean, they're using noir elements today in this movie. Nick, what do you think?
I have an absolutely perfect example of that got kicked in the jazz apples by the pandemic, and that's the film Reminiscence with Hugh Jackman and Tandaway Newton and
interesting.
The latest Lady Jessica. I'm trying to remember her name.
Yeah. Is that the one that's by Lisa
That's
Joy?
the one. That's the one. That's the makers of Westworld.
Yes,
Christopher Nolan's little brother wrote the thing. His sister-in-law is the director. It is deeply steeped in noir. It's got the fractured narrative. It's got the voiceover. It's got the woman that came in out of the sun. It's all about memory. It takes a lot from a now almost forgotten little 90s film, which is Strange Days, which is much grittier than this. But it's set in a partially drowned Miami. A friend of mine said it's got great world building. It's sometime when the climate crisis has exacerbated things more, but it is deeply steeped in noir. And I think it was very unfairly treated by the critics and the box office.
Wow, I need to go. It's on my list, but I haven't. I didn't hear good things about it, so I kind of put it on the back of my list. But
I would suggest you reconsider that.
Excellent.
The bad opinion of it. I would urge people to go find this film.
Rob, what about you?
So, the first thing that comes to my mind is, of course, it's older, is LA Confidential, which is probably the most easy, accessible thing. I just got the Criterion Blu-ray for Miller's Crossing.
Oh, wow.
And just a fantastic example of that. If you're looking for traces of it outside of like the hard-boiled movie, there's a little film called Blade Runner and another little film called Brazil that have elements of film noir in it too.
They do.
So I just wanted to put that out there because we're running short on time.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I do want to mention the number of major filmmakers that started out making noirs. The Wachowskis, one of the best lesbian noir ever made, Bound. The Coen brothers,
Blood
Simple, and then Miller's Crossing. Ryan Johnson, Brick. I mean, that is a hard-boiled detective story if ever there was one. A little guy named Christopher Nolan. Made
Memento.
2 noirs, Memento, which is just a brain crusher, and then before that he made something else which is very noir as well. That was a small, almost a student film that you've got to go find. But yes, some of the biggest directors today started out making noir films.
Mm-hmm.
Chinatown's another one.
Chinatown's excellent.
Excellent one.
We couldn't come out of this without mentioning that. Thanks, Rob, because otherwise we wouldn't have this. Would have no credit, no credibility for this whole hour. So, and I'm just going to finish it off with my most recent experience watching a recent noir movie was last year. Actually, it's a 2022 movie. It's a Korean movie called Decision to Leave. It's by Park Chan-wook, who is a great filmmaker. He's made, I don't know if you ever guys saw Old Boy.
Yes.
And they just restored that one. So I haven't seen that one, but I want to.
That
he also made another movie called, like a horror movie, vampire movie called Thirst, which I like a lot.
Okay.
But this Decision to Leave is really excellent, about a detective who's investigating a death that leads him to his widowed wife, and then there's sort of like feelings there, and you've got all the tension, and you've got the mystery, and you've got the atmosphere. I mean, this movie just breathes like oppression. And it's really, really amazing movie. I think it was very overlooked last year. So I definitely and it's like I said, we're still seeing elements of that today. So I can't believe it's already come to an end. But we're gonna close off our main discussion of film noir. But we've got a lot of ideas. If you guys out there want us to talk about anything particular, or have suggestions for movies that you should watch for noir, feel free to reach out to any one of us, because we love talking about this stuff, and I hope we get a chance to do more. Rob?
Also, if you really want to delve into this and just sort of want a one-stop shop, the Film Noir Foundation.
Yes.
And they also have a weekly or a monthly newsletter. You can get that for free without joining the foundation, but it tells you what film noirs are on the air. So this helps people like me that are obsessive make notes of films we have to see.
And
schedule that DVR.
I'll add to that shout out to Eddie Muller, the Film Foundation, Film Noir Foundation. They restore lots of great stuff from overseas, including he found a trove of Argentinian stuff. This is the T-shirt that I'm wearing is from the Noir City road show that he brought them from San Francisco to Seattle. I think it's only going as far as east as Texas, but
Chicago.
He's a newspaper man and the son of a newspaper man. So he actually has to write in a way people would want to read. And he's clear and he knows his stuff. And you could do much worse than starting out with Eddie Muller if you want to take a journey down the dark alley of film noir.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to be right back, and we're going to close out the show. But we're going to close out the show right after this.
And I'm back. Hello, folks. The ghost of podcast past. Ha, 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 ha. This is our special time for our YouTube folks. This is what we usually spend time talking. Bonus time, as we like to say. So for somebody who wants to introduce somebody to noir, what would you guys recommend?
I would recommend the two things. I would recommend getting a copy of Dark City by Eddie Muller, which has just been reissued, or also the Film Noir Encyclopedia by Harry Abrams, which I have, and it's literally lists a ton of films that are film noir, gives a description of them and just all kinds of fun facts about them. It literally is like the greatest, like, just I want to read for 10 minutes book. You can make notes and write down films. That's the way to go. And just start with the classics, man. Start with Maltese Falcon, and maybe dive into, if you want to take baby steps in, Casablanca, then Maltese Falcon.
Sure.
But then Doug
Casablanca is not noir.
It's not, but it's noir
black and white. No,
it's noir. It's noir. It's noir adjacent, right? Because it's got a lot of the actors in it that you'll see, and it's kind of been a great gateway for a lot of people I know that like film noir. That's kind of their gateway to it, right?
Sure.
But Maltese Falcon, Double Indemnity, The Third Man. There's stuff like Shockproof that's out there, DOA. If you go to if you have a streaming service, there is a film noir app that you can download, and it shows a ton of the B film stuff. Just look up Film Noir. I can't remember the station of it, but they show like The Sniper and blah 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 on the run. Everybody's on the run, right? So that's another good place too. Is just go to your app that you stream with and look up Film Noir. There's one you can pull up.
Well, here's another question with that though. What about TV or books for folks? Has there ever been a really good TV show?
I mean,
Max
yes.
Headroom.
Max Headroom is Max Headroom is very neo-noirish. Yes.
It would be hard to find. I don't know if HBO dumped it, but HBO did a series of Philip Marlowe stories with Powers Booth back in the 80s when they were trying to get content for themselves.
Mm-hmm. What about like the new Perry Mason and such?
I was going to say the new Perry Mason series is very noirish. It's got noir elements to it, to be sure. From a neo-noir perspective, I think that Michael Mann series that he did on HBO, Tokyo Vice, had a lot of elements of noir to it as well, especially the Japanese noir I was talking about. But also for people who are, not wanting to like sort of get in, but not like too deep right away. Eddie came out with a book just this past year called Noir Bar. So, and if you're a mixologist and you like your drinks, he has got those sort of he's got a list of like, I don't know, maybe 20, 25, 30 classic noirs. And he's got drinks that he's sort of associates with each one of those. Some of them are in the movies themselves. Some of the ones he's a mixologist, so some of the ones he has created and crafted that were inspired by these movies. But the book production is it's gorgeous, beautiful photos of the films themselves, as well as the promotion films, like the films, the posters and everything. Movie posters. That's a whole other like. The movie posters for film noir?
Yeah, just
art form. Form.
Yes, absolutely.
I will second reading stuff by Eddie Muller, Dark City, The Lost World of Film Noir. But if you want to reach the outer limits of film noir on television, Fargo.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah, I could see that. I could
see it, especially in that newest season. Very much so.
Yes.
Nick, I think you also mentioned to me that you were able to find a lot of noir movies on YouTube.
Yes, I was going to mention that. I don't know how much we wish to bring the evil of the copyright gods down on us, but a lot of these film noirs ended up being in public domain,
like DOA
or Kansas City Confidential. And you won't be able to find Double Indemnity or Sunset Boulevard on YouTube. But you'd be surprised how much you could find. I could find Where the Sidewalk Ends. I could find Call Northside 777. I could find a couple of Ann Sheridan's old movies. I'm surprised by how much is on YouTube as a full movie. So just start there. It's not going to cost you anything if you're on YouTube for free. This isn't even the YouTube rental thing, mind you.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's pretty awesome news and everything. Do you see there still being a big market for future projects?
I mean, I think the whole thriller aspect of noir is going to always be popular in the movies. But I also think, I don't think it's a coincidence that I got involved or really interested in noir over the last like half decade or decade or whatever, because I think, the way things are happening in the world, I think it's very it's very easy to be caught up and feel like you're caught up in something that you don't understand, that you're stuck in a place that you desperately want to get out of, and you'll do just about anything. There's forces out there that are very seductive, that will lead you into some down. I mean, these are elements that exist all too frequently in the world today, and I think are things that anybody can identify with. And I'm surprised we don't see more stories like this right now, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
That's really awesome that you can still see that kind of stuff. Because I know
unfortunately,
but here on the network and such, we also have Ron Fortier doing all his book reviews each week, and he does a lot of crime thrillers, and he also does a lot of pulp. But
pulp is about as hard to define and put a definition on as noir.
Yeah, well, exactly.
But I would add to that noir is one of the most searched and valued content terms that people both use and publish. So it's a going concern. Let's put it that way.
It's funny, none of you guys brought up Star Trek: The Next Generation with the holodeck episodes.
This actually did come up with some friends of mine when we were talking, because one of the things that came up was the similarities between cyberpunk and future noir and that sort of thing. And I said, so what does it mean that Jean-Luc Picard's favorite fictional character is a Dashiell Hammett pastiche? And we all went, whoa, I don't know.
Yep.
It's pretty awesome stuff.
Yeah, so it's interesting. And sort of, on the Doctor Who side, we've got Melody Malone. So we've got the two biggest sci-fi franchises of all still have little touches of noir in them.
Yes.
Yep, exactly. It's pretty awesome. And if you haven't had a chance, folks, in one of the Diaries of River Song, they did a Melody Malone adventure. And then there was a book also.
Absolutely. And as being a River Song and an Alex Kingston fan, she's in a really good sort of neo-noir that was filmed a little while ago with just starting off her career called help me out here. Is it The Closer?
Are you talking about The Croupier?
Yes, The Croupier. Yes, thank you.
With Clive Owen. Yes,
with Clive Owen.
Yes. Clive Owen. And yes, she appears in the Altogether, and let me tell you, she has nothing to be ashamed of.
That's true. It's true. Yeah. That's the other thing about neo noir is that a lot of the things that the Hays Code was restricting back in the classic era, whether it's sex and or violence.
Or both.
They are in full force, like in neo noir.
Sometimes a little bit to excess.
Yeah, absolutely. And probably the most excessive examples of both can be found with Frank Miller's Sin City.
Very much
true.
Yeah,
that's pretty awesome. All right, let's wrap up the episode. Thank you for that information, guys. We do appreciate you guys. So that's going to wrap up another episode of the Earth Station One podcast. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Mr. Nick, always great to see you, sir.
Thank you, sir. It's always great to see you.
Anything you want to promote or shout out about?
I will just give another kick in the pants to Reminiscence. If you like what we've said about film noir and want to see some future film noir, I believe it's on whatever the WB HBO thing is mutated into. If you were a subscriber to that.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Definitely check it out. And Rob, thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I should also send some crosstown traffic to our listeners to Modern Musicology, which I host with several other folks here on the network. You can check that out as well. And also, I have a radio show on Louder Than War Radio called Antics. It's every Monday. It's streaming out of Manchester, England. And you can hear it from 12 to 2 Central Time, 1 to 3 Eastern, or 6 to 8 Greenwich Time. So check that out as well.
That is awesome. And congratulations on your 2nd anniversary
Oh,
of
thank
Modern
you.
Musicology.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And I love the guest you had for your anniversary show.
Yeah.
It was really awesome. And Mr. Mike, we've made it through another one, my friend.
We did. And as always, it's my pleasure, although as much pleasure as you can get from being in the, dark streets of Dark City.
That is very true. Anything you want to shout out about, sir?
I do. I am pleased to announce that Monsterama will be back next year. Not so much for those people who are into retro films. This is a retro horror, sci-fi, fantasy film sort of convention, and and we may talk some noir too. But it'll be back next year in August, 9th through the 11th. At the same hotel, the Atlanta Hilton Northeast, and I will be once again returning as the director of the literature and arts and comics track, and I'm very pleased about that. But I'm even more excited because we've announced our first wave of guests. We are going to have Victoria Vetri, Martine Beswick, Zandor Vorkov, who I'm not as familiar with, to be honest with you, Elizabeth Shepard, Sam Irvin, who a lot of people should know, Robert Tinnell, and Clint Howard are all going to be in attendance of Monsterama, and that's just the beginning. We're going to have some more guest announcements as it develops, but that's a pretty good list right there. I'm really excited about the theme this year, which is it's called When Monsterama Ruled the Earth, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So I hope everybody will save space on their calendar to be in Atlanta for that weekend. I know it's close to Dragon Con, I know, but it's sort of like an appetizer before the main dish.
It does. It's
An aperitif.
Yeah, exactly. Very much so. Very, very much so.
So come have a appetizer with Clint Howard and us for
that sounds frightening.
It does, exactly. Knowing the projects that Clint Howard has worked on, so I definitely think so.
Well, the first place I went to was relatively benign. I want to know if he wanted to serve us some Tranya.
Wow.
I'm old.
Yes. So awesome, kids. My shout out real quick. Judy and I went to go see some live music once again. Last night we got to go see The English Beat, which was a ton of fun. And it's really sad because Dave is the only original member left in the band. And, the rest of the band is, they've been around for over 45 years. And, members have passed away or other members have left. And it is so great to see him keeping the spirit alive and everything. And these folks who played with him were no slouches or anything. And the backup singer for him actually is his own daughter. So it's actually pretty awesome. And it was great to go down memory row and just have fun with it. It was an interesting situation. And I also think, folks, as I always love to say, go see live music. This is how most artists make their money. This is how they can, they don't make money off of, CDs or, Spotify or any kind of the streaming service. What was it? Weird Al said he had over 80,000 downloads on Spotify and he made like $18 or something like that.
When Taylor Swift makes less than $5 on Spotify, something's out of whack.
Exactly. So there's some screwed up stuff in that. And you know what? It's interesting when that type of stuff happens and it's craziness. And so, live music is how they make money. That's how Taylor Swift made her $1 billion pretty much this year. And, these concerts are wonderful to see. Judy and I were somehow trying to go out to the Sphere in Las Vegas to go see U2. It would have, it was mostly all sold out before we even, came up with the idea. So, but there's tons of great things to do and lots of great things to see. So definitely go see live music if you get a chance. I always highly recommend it and it'll always be a shout out for me. So it's pretty cool. And always, thanks for listening to the Earth Station One podcast. Always remember, we couldn't do this without you. You know, if you want to help support the station, why not go to our Tee-Public store? We got really cool ESO Network swag up there. And up until Christmas, everything is 35% off. So if you check it out, you know, this will come out a week and a half before Christmas. The deadline's getting really close if you want to try to get it for the holiday gifts. But you know what? You still can do it. And I know they have rush shipping, and they're going to try to get you your order as soon as possible. All you have to do is go to a link right up on the top of Earth Station One or Earth Station Who or the ESO Network. Definitely check it out. It's definitely worth it. Also, if you want to help support us, please go to our Patreon. We have a wonderful group, and you know, we want to thank our Patreon folks for making it a banner year for us this year. Thank you. Thank you. We do appreciate you, patrons, and you two out there. Why not, for as little as $1 a month, you two can help support us. And I just found out this week, the Tales from Hollywoodland podcast is going to be going up on Patreon for us. So they're going to be going up 2 days early also. So it's pretty cool stuff. And that will be in the next couple weeks. You know, it's always great to, you know, just help us out that way. Check it out, patreon.com/ESO Network. You know what, folks? We love hearing from you. Please, if you want to hear more about noir, or if you want to hear more about any topic, please write us. Feedback at Earth Station One is the best way to get in touch with us. Remember, you can find Earth Station One wherever fine podcasts are found. And we are now up on the YouTube music app as a podcast. So you could also find us that way now. So definitely check it out. If you want, please give us 5 stars wherever you listen to us. And if you want, and if you made it this far into the audio, like and subscribe, please. As always, like and subscribe. Thank you, as always, for listening. On behalf of myself, Mike Faber, of course, Mr. Mike Gordon, and of course, Nick Fraser, and Rob Levy, who had to head out early to go to work. But thank you for everyone who's joined us tonight. We do appreciate you more than you ever think. Hope everyone is having a great holiday season so far. Hug your loved ones and just go and have a great time. And remember, ho, ho, ho. Holidays coming, folks. You got to get going. So take it easy. We'll see you soon. Peace. And we are done.
You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.